Whoa, that was loud. Hello, everyone. It's me, Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I wanted to hop on here and talk a little bit about Venus in the sign of Gemini and also Jupiter's ingress into the sign of Gemini. Both are going to be ruled by Mercury in the sign of Taurus. Mercury and Venus are going to be in mutual reception, meaning that they rule each other. And so whenever this happens, there's more of a symbiotic process that happens. It's more of an ease of integration about the dynamics that are occurring whenever these two signs are ruled by each other. And I want us to keep in mind that Venus is still ruling Uranus and Taurus, which is Pluto's ruler. And Venus is also ruling that south node in Libra. So there's a lot coming up, and I wanted to just kind of more focus on this dynamic. Today, the 24th, Venus is in a trine to Pluto, and it is in a trine that we call a first quarter trine. As this is happening, Venus is also opposing the asteroid Lilith. This is not Black Moon Lilith. This is the actual physical body, the asteroid Lilith. And Lilith is ruled by Jupiter. So there's a lot of energy being reflected right now that we can consciously work with. And so I want to talk about this, and I'm going to share the chart. But first, I want to talk just a little bit about Venus in the sign of Gemini. Anyone who has this in their natal chart understands, or a Venus in the third house, understands that the way that they learn about themselves is through the intake of more information. And from that information, it sparks ideas and inner realizations as a way to understand themselves further. Throughout this transit, we're being asked to gather more information. And it's really interesting to think about because Pluto is trine to Venus throughout this week. And what this means with Pluto in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus and Taurus, is that there are certain dynamics around what we've learned about ourselves, Venus, and about our relationships with others, Venus, more in the Libra sense, is needing to be liberated from. It's our learning, our conditioning, whether that be learned guilt or learned shame, learned judgment. But with Pluto trine to Venus in a first quarter phase this week, it has it to where we're understanding that there's something that's reached some type of inner limitation. But with the trine, it can be where we come into an awareness about what this really is. And it's really fascinating to think about Aquarius, Pluto being in Aquarius. It is retrograde. So there's something that we're reliving and redoing in order to resolve around our inner relationship to self, our relationships to others, and the learning around that. But with Aquarius, it very much is about clearing space. The liberation process, the rebelling against the known and familiar ways of doing things. And as we liberate and clear this space, it creates space inside for us to take in more information. It's no different than sometimes when we have a big Uranian aspect transit to our own natal chart, relationships can end, friendships can end, something big gets cleared out, it gets liberated and jettisoned from within. And sometimes that can be external in order to transform the internal, or there can be an internal process of learning or understanding that we get to liberate from in order to clear space for more from the external to come in, Meaning that, think about this, if you have been in partnerships with people, whether it be friends, family, whomever, sometimes those relationships reach a limitation and they can organically just fizzle out. You know, we don't always keep our friends or the same partner on a romantic level for the entirety of our life. And it's because evolution is not able to happen anymore within the context of that relationship. This is really something that is being reflected by Venus in Gemini ruling the South Node in Libra. Old relationships coming to an understanding where maybe our limitations are existing in our thought processes around how we've learned to be in them, Venus and Gemini ruling that South Node, or just relationships in general, that really there's become a stagnation. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there needs to be a big blow up in our relationships. Sometimes that can happen with Aquarian energy, but things can just fizzle out. You realize, oh, our values don't really align, or, oh, I don't really feel like this is compatible, and maybe I once did. But as we liberate from those dynamics, Pluto and Aquarius, trine to Venus and Gemini, what it does is it confronts us on an internal level so we can understand more about who we are, and it clears space to bring in new people or to bring in new knowledge regarding how we identify on an interrelational basis, or how we are identifying in our relationships that are external, outside of ourselves. So with Pluto and a first quarter trine to Venus at this time, this can be where we are really being called to liberate from some of these dynamics, whether it be our learning, how we think about ourselves, and it's creating an impact on our external relationships. This is pulling in, Mercury and Taurus ruling that Venus, that there could be some type of stagnation around how we're inwardly relating. And so it's creating friction with our external relationships. And so there's this need to jettison or to liberate from any type of dynamic that is creating clutter within. So that way we can clear space and expand upon what it is that we're meant to know. And that's going to take some time, because once you liberate from one thing, it's not like something just drops into you right then and there. It can take a bit. So this is a time of decluttering our relationships, how we internally talk to ourselves, our values. This can be where we're really coming to understand that our values don't align with some of the people in our lives. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in order for evolution to proceed, for us to grow, we need to clear that space in order for new to come in. And this is really what this Pluto trine in a new phase to Venus is about. It's really taking stock of what's going on an internal level and understanding what no longer is resonating or working within us in regards to our values or our needs or what we're giving meaning to. And this is really seen and indicated by that Mercury and Taurus ruling Venus. It's also seen by Uranus and Taurus, Pluto's ruler, being ruled by Venus and Gemini. So as we are decluttering, so to speak, whether that be on an internal level or an external level, we're then able to take in new knowledge. And it's really important with Lilith, the asteroid in Sag, that's opposing this Venus, to do this work, to throw off beliefs that are impeding upon knowing ourselves on a very natural level. Lilith in Sagittarius is really like fostering the inner development of what feels true, sincere, and authentic to each one of us. And with it opposing Venus in the sign of Gemini, there can be a lot of learned behavior within relationships with others or to ourselves that Lilith is really like speaking to, hey, this isn't honest or true. This isn't who you are. You know, all of these dynamics. And so there's this need to oppose and throw off old learned behavior, old learning around guilt and shame as a way to clear space and really tap into our authentic nature. And then tomorrow on the 25th, Jupiter is going to enter the sign of Gemini and is ruling this Lilith in Sagittarius. And it will start to form a trine to Pluto as well later on next week. And I will be talking more in depth about that. But this is really this place of, as we clear and we declutter what's internally going on that is no longer resonating, we get to utilize this energy of Venus and of Jupiter to start this process of expansion upon our inner relationship to self and how we're doing relationships with others. This has the ability, through this learning, for us to continue this transformative process of our relationship to self. And this is really important whenever you think about this. Because with Venus ruling the South Node in Libra, there can be this dynamic where we had a concentrated amount of energy in Taurus. And so it was this time period for us to really go within and to develop our relationship to self as a way to reconnect with our unique sense of individuality. Oh, this is what I really value and need in a partnership. I maybe need someone who has the ability to hear where I'm coming from, or I need someone who's willing to have these deep conversations on an emotional level. I need someone who's willing to grow and evolve just like how I am. And with Venus and Gemini now ruling that South Node in Libra, there can be a lot of conversations that come up in regards to our relationships with other people during this time that get us to understand where our differences lie. And Pluto trining Venus in Gemini is really confronting our own inner limitations around our own thinking stemming from what we have learned. And Pluto is very much about who you are, who you aren't, and who you absolutely cannot be. This is a great Jeffrey Wolf Green teaching. And so there are these confrontations that can be happening throughout this transit, stemming from our conversations we have with others, especially when talking about our own values or our own needs. This can be where we're confronted with maybe we are projecting our expectations onto another and we're being confronted by it through our conversations. All of a sudden, someone being like, you know, that's something you should do on your own. You don't need me for this, or vice versa. And what it does is, as we are confronted with this, we can have an inner dialogue that goes on. And this is really reflected by Mercury and Taurus ruling that Venus. And this inner dialogue that we have can actually spark new ideas or new information. And with Mercury and Taurus ruling Jupiter and Gemini starting tomorrow, it can really help us create an expansive process on learning new things about ourselves. This is a time to go out, to have the conversations, to understand more deeply about what it is that feels authentic and real for us. And then pulling in Venus and Gemini, the ruler of that South Node in Libra, to understand where maybe some of these imbalances are still being perpetuated that we then need to declutter from our lives. And that is seen with Venus trining Pluto in Aquarius. So I want to pull up this chart for you all. to show this. This is for tomorrow. This is right before Jupiter enters the sign of Gemini. And Jupiter is at this anaretic degree of Taurus. So there is absolutely something here that is wanting to wrap up around this process of growing our relationship to self in the ways in which we've done it. But it's in a fixed sign. So something has or could possibly have reached its own limitation, seeing as it is trine to Pluto as well. So there's this need to really liberate from these old beliefs and old ways of inwardly relating. It's like we're getting a sense of clarification at this point in time. We've been doing all of this Taurian work, and now we are getting an in-depth understanding of clarification. And this is after this full moon and Sag just happened. So it's been giving us time to reflect on our beliefs and our truths. And when we look at Lilith here, retrograde, in the sign of Sagittarius, opposing Venus, we can see that Lilith is really helping to foster this higher intelligence of reconnecting with what feels authentic by throwing off old learning around relationships with others and relationship to self, and instead being able to tap into what actually feels authentic and truthful and sincere to each one of us on an individual level. Jupiter at this time is going to be sextile Neptune. Excuse me. And this helps with this dissolving process while also being able to understand information about ourselves that's pertinent through the direct experiences that we've been having that have helped us to grow. And then also understanding through comparing and contrasting Venus opposing Lilith, what really needs to culminate in our lives and what is more, what is the experience of the expansion process that we've been having, that there are dynamics that we have learned that we can take into the future because they are timeless and invaluable in nature. So the other thing that I want to talk about is that Kassandra is in Aquarius, ruled by this Uranus, and it is entering a trine. Well, Venus and the Sun are entering a trine with Kassandra as well. And this will be seen next week, and I will talk about it more then. But essentially, I'm going to stop this share to talk about this, but I did want to point these signatures out. Essentially, with Kassandra in Aquarius and Venus in the sign of Gemini, Jupiter entering the sign of Gemini, there can be these conversations that we're really meant to be having with people, so that way we can understand and take in more knowledge, so we can understand more about ourselves. But there can be a fear around this. I'm afraid to talk to this person. I'm afraid to tell them my truth. Jupiter. And speaking one's truth has a lesson in it, especially in regard to Venus ruling that South Node in Libra. We can't predict how people are going to take the information whenever we're having a hard conversation with them. The dynamic with Kassandra is about recovering our voice and being fearless and speaking our truth or some knowledge that we have. But the lesson is that whoever we say whatever to can do whatever they want with that information. We can hope that maybe it helps to change something, but at the very least, it can plant a seed. Speaking up and out about our truth in our relationships with others doesn't always negate that it's going to go the way that we expect, Libra. But that feedback we receive from the conversations that are meant to have can literally help transform our relationship to ourselves. There can be lessons in creating self-reliance by being confronted with someone not really wanting to hear where we're coming from, and us having to really tap into our own soul sovereignty and to understand that that necessarily isn't really about us. It can be about someone else and their insecurity around changing or growing or evolving. And that's really seen with Kassandra being ruled by Uranus and Taurus, and that Uranus and Taurus being ruled by Venus and Gemini. And that Venus is ruling the South Node in Libra. So there can be a lot of conversations that are coming up that ultimately help us to understand ourselves on a deeper level. It's where we can plant seeds for other people without the expectation of them doing what we want them to do or following our advice. But it can be where we're confronted with the actual truth of what's going on. This is seen with Neptune sextile Jupiter. Even as Jupiter enters into the sign of Gemini, there can be, after we have conversations, the kicker with Venus and Gemini, though, is to pay attention to when you need to be by yourself, seeing as Mercury is in Taurus ruling that. And this helps us to integrate what it is that we're learning, the feedback that we're receiving, so it can become knowledge and direct experience and a deeper understanding of ourselves and what we need. This is a time where we've been doing all of this Taurus work of figuring out how to gain more self-reliance, how to feel grounded in our relationship to self. But with Pluto trine to Venus and Venus ruling that South Node, we can have these conversations that really confront us with, maybe this isn't someone that I necessarily want in my life anymore because it's just not compatible, or our values aren't aligning, or this person doesn't have the ability to hear where I'm coming from. But that can be sad, but ultimately what it's doing is it's clearing space for new to come in order for us to then expand upon more knowledge pertaining to direct experience and conversations that we're having with new people at this time. And that is part of Jupiter entering into Gemini, and also Venus in the sign of Gemini, that we can apply this as self-knowledge whenever we take the time to sit with ourselves and to integrate this. So I just wanted to bring this up for those of you who are needing to have conversations with others, that they're scared to, that this actually is a really beneficial time, because it's going to confront us with who's meant to stay and who's meant to go. And like I said, it doesn't have to be some dramatic blow up event. It can just be where we're confronted with the truth of, hey, this isn't really working out. And we can go our own way, and we can send love and admiration for the growth and the lessons that were learned. But it is a time period of where we are decluttering old ways of thinking, old ways of learned guilt and behaviors, and also old relationships that are no longer resonating with us on a soul level. If you've been consciously working with this, you're probably someone who's really evolving right now. And so some people might not stay in your life, but this really brings the opportunity for new people to come in. The other dynamic that I want to speak to is with Kassandra trine to Venus and Gemini, and Kassandra is ruled by Uranus and Taurus. Uranus and Taurus is ruled by that Venus and Gemini that is trining Kassandra, is that there's this need to be absolutely honest and to be impeccable in your actions with who you are and how you present. That Venus and Gemini and Jupiter entering Gemini, there can be a duplicitousness. I'm afraid to really be who I am, or I'm afraid to speak or say these things about how I'm really feeling. And the need is to just be honest and to have a sincere intention. And you can't go wrong. Whatever information that you receive from having the conversations with others at this time really has the potential to help in a transformative process. If you're someone who has a hard time talking about how you feel, this can be a point in time where you get to validate yourself. You get to understand what it means to recover your voice. And that ultimately will perpetuate your own evolutionary growth. So these are the things that I wanted to talk about for today. I want to let you all know, I've said this last video, I have my Gemini birthday special going on. A few of you have booked. I love that. I'm looking forward to meeting more of you who are Geminis. And if you're new to my channel, I just want to restate that I have a monthly birthday special that's going on. Each month, I offer a natal and solar return reading for it's 90 minutes. You meet me on Zoom and I record it as well for you to have after. And it is only $75 where we go over your natal chart and your solar return if you so choose to. This is going to be offered for Geminis until next month on the 20th, and then it will switch over to Cancers whenever it is their turn to have a birthday. So come see me. I would love to see you. I love meeting you all. I say that every time. And I just want you guys to know that it takes a lot of courage to speak your truth. And this is a week that will really, it can impact you and show you who it is that is meant to stay in your life and who you might have outgrown. And that's not bad. I think in society, we value people by how long they can keep relationships. And sometimes if you are evolving at a rapid pace, there are some relationships that are not meant to continue to move forward with you. And it's not because you're bad or something's wrong. It's really understanding that it can actually be more beneficial to go your own way because of realizing that there's a stagnation in your own growth and it's perpetuating the stagnation in someone else's own evolutionary growth as well to keep that status quo going. And Pluto in Aquarius is literally about liberating from the status quo, and it's trining Venus. So be gentle with yourself this week. Have the conversations that you need to have. You will be confronted with the truth, and then you'll get to make a choice as to how to move forward. But you're never going to know if you don't have these conversations. And so I really wanted to say this, and I will see you all soon.